Oh, and there's a little red button. So once again, thanks everyone for joining today. I know you have a lot of options on what to do at noon on a Wednesday, so appreciate that. This is going to be very focused on trying to get something of benefit to you. So I'm going to try to keep it moving pretty fast, try to be entertaining, although it's a bit daunting because you can't get feedback on these webinars. And I hope you'll get a few things that will help you in your life when it comes to creating routines. So today's goals, I want everyone to be thinking of hopefully one routine or one change they're trying to make in their life. And we're going to work on those things as we go through the webinar. Again, we're going to try to be done within 30 to 40 minutes. And if there's 2 or 3 new things that you pick up today, I think that's mission accomplished. And I'm hoping to learn 2 or 3 new things from you. So looking forward to your participation as well. So to start out, what we're going to do is we're going to do a poll just to get everyone thinking about this. So what types of routines are you currently trying to introduce into your life? So this will be just a written poll. It's all anonymous. And Julian, if you could open the poll and then everyone can input their thinking. I didn't realize that I got to vote too. This is very exciting. Okay, so I think it's a pretty straightforward poll. So let's give everyone a couple more seconds before Julian show everyone what the results were. Okay, Julian, if the poll's working, can you please show the results? Here we go. So most common are things in the morning, health related. Yeah, so a lot of it is activity based, health related. I'm just going to make a note of this because I'm going to change a few things then. Mostly morning, and then a few people with financial, self-exploration, and quite a number of work-related routines. Okay, that's awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing on that. Next, another quick poll talking about what has been tricky about trying to implement routines in the past. So we're not using negative words like where we failed. It's more, what has created a challenge. So we term it as what's been tricky when you've been trying to implement routines in the past. So Julian, can you please open the poll? Okay, we'll give everyone another 10 seconds. And then Julian, can you please show the results? Okay, so the big one here is motivation. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a bit. And then a balance between finding the time, changes in life, lack of support. So we'll say motivation was number one, and finding the time is number two. Okay. Thanks everyone for that. Those will be the only two poll questions, but now in a couple of slides here, we're going to get your pen and paper working. So for those people who don't know me, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background to put some of the examples I'm going to give as we go through this in context. There's three pictures here. Top left is a picture of me cycling in the Banff Grand Fondo with my late wife, Lorraine. She was diagnosed with a rare type of cancer called nut carcinoma in 2013 and passed away in 2014. We had two sons. One was born in Hong Kong when we lived overseas, and one was born in Canada. They're currently 17 and 19. I live with my youngest son and the dog we'll talk about in a minute. And then my oldest son has launched and lives on his own right now. And then on the right is my partner Tanya and I at the top of Mont Ventoux in France. So you can see that I like cycling. Tanya has a daughter who's 9 and a son who's 11. She had lost her dad to cancer in 2013, and that's how we met. And then below is, rather than put pictures of kids on, because we are recording this, I've got my dog Guilfoyle, who I predict will be coming up to join us in 9 minutes. He's chewing a bone downstairs. And so we've got 4 kids, a dog. Tanya lives with her 2 kids. I've got one son who's moved out, a son who lives at home. We've all had different types of challenges when it comes to mental health over the last, probably I would describe it as, say, 10-ish years. And the other important thing to note is I actually, in addition to the work that I do, have done some work as a personal trainer in the past, so that will kind of factor into some of the stories I tell later on. And also in all of this, we have been supported by a number of psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, general practitioners, friends and family. So at a point in time in my life, probably about, I would say 15 years ago, I would have predicted I would never talk to a psychologist in my life, but I was very lucky to have a job where I actually worked with a number of psychologists back in 2004. And that really opened my eyes to just what an awesome resource psychologists can be. So I think for anyone who's struggling with anything where they're not quite sure where to turn, there are a lot of different options available. I'm based in Calgary. There are counseling centers that will do work based on means tests, but I would really strongly encourage anyone who needs professional support to reach out, because that has been instrumental for me anyway in helping me move forward. So when we talk about routine, what is a routine? So it's a repeated behavior that requires limited conscious thought. And this is a really important concept because what you're trying to do is build something into your life that you're going to do on a consistent basis, but also it doesn't require you to think about it. And so it's not chewing up. I always joke about how my brain is like 2 little gerbils running on a wheel, and we don't want to occupy one of those gerbils thinking about something that's not important. So a routine is something that doesn't require conscious thought. So frees up your mind to focus on other, hopefully more important things. For those people, because I know a lot of people who are participating have kids, you think back to when they're young and the importance of bedtime routines, the routine related to their naps. We learn pretty quickly in life that the routine can be a beautiful thing and things can go horribly wrong when our kids get out of routines. Yet as adults, we tend to forget that for ourselves. I think the best example in my life is skip the dishes, and how during COVID I have justified using skip the dishes more because I'm supporting skip the dishes drivers and local restaurants. But the truth is, using something like Skip or DoorDash or Uber Eats for me is normally just not being prepared to actually make dinner. So that's kind of my fallback. So if I have my meal planning routine and I buy things in advance and I know what I'm going to have for dinner, so I do have it's barbecued salmon tonight, then I'm not trying to find an alternative. And so building routines and not having to think about stuff can really be beneficial in your life. And what the research shows is when presented with a choice, people will generally do what is easiest, quickest, and most enjoyable. So the fallback can not be the best thing for you at times. Not saying the easiest, quickest, and most enjoyable things are always the worst things, but they often aren't the best things. And it's not that routines have to take over your life. It's just for certain things that make sense to set up routines because they're important things that you want to make sure get done. There's a lot of research in healthcare around how long-term care plans are actually generally not adhered to because people have a hard time actually building the routines into their lives. And so it's actually quite important in those types of situations for you to actually be following the routines that are being developed for you. So when my wife passed away in 2014, I literally sort of fell apart. I had to take a year off of work, and I had the benefit of having an amazing colleague who supported me a lot and actually supported my wife when she was sick. And the analogy that she gave me, which has always stuck with me, is how your life is a little bit like the tachometer on your car. So I've chosen the tachometer from a McLaren Senna, which is an amazing supercar, but we all have vehicles that have the display that's showing your engine RPMs. And in the case of Lorraine and I, we had both probably been around 7,000 RPMs for a number of years. And we had a very structured life where we used to send each other Microsoft Outlook invitations to plan our days, and everything we did around who was taking care of the kids or what things we were doing outside of work was very structured, and we were very good at supporting each other if something happened during the day, and it worked really well. And then she got sick and everything fell apart. And what Barb was trying to emphasize to me was that if you run super close to the red area, and the red area is generally where after a limited period of time you blow apart, then you don't have a lot of capacity for global pandemics, kids who are sick, the things that happen in life that can create challenges for you. And so if you want to stay out of the red, you have a few choices. One of them is you can do less things. And in my case, I had to more or less stop doing many things for quite a period of time. You can try to be more efficient, which is really what routines are all about. You can get a better engine, and that comes with time and maturity. You can use different support. So that's where people like psychologists and your friends and family come in. Or you can learn to cope more effectively with things that in the past would have put you into the red. And so that's a big part of what I've been working through is trying to stay out of the red as much as possible, but also learning how to roll a bit more with life. And you'll see that when we start talking through examples. But I came upon some interesting research around habits, because a lot of times people are kind of discouraged. They start something and it doesn't stick right away. And so I thought this was pretty interesting. So a habit is essentially a routine with a cue. So it's something like if you go to the bathroom, you wash your hands afterwards. So there's some cue, some precursor to then the routine that you form. And so this was research out of the UK, but the average time it took to start a habit that stuck was 66 days, and it ranged between 18 days and 254 days. So I know a lot of people think in terms of if you do something consistently for 3 weeks, that might be true for some people, but for other people, it might not be true. So I tell you this not to discourage you, but just to put into perspective that we often beat ourselves up over what we perceive to be not being successful. But what the research also showed was that missing a single day didn't actually have a lasting effect on whether or not a person ultimately adopted the habit. And back when I was personal training, a lot of people would come to me and they would say, what is the most effective exercise I can do, mostly around losing weight? And my answer was always that the most effective exercise you could do is the exercise that you will actually do. So if you look at it from a pure, what's the best thing, it's actually rowing. But the reality is most of us don't have rowing machines, and most of us don't row. But if you do go for a walk, that's amazing. If you go ride your bike, that's amazing. If you play with your kids, that's exercise. And so we often try to make it complicated, but it's really about finding those things that we actually will do. And if we miss a day because life happens, then we keep moving forward, and we try to adhere to the routine or the habit the next day. So now with your pen and paper, and I'm just looking to see if I'm looking. Okay, so I've got a comment here. It's been tricky to stay on top of things, especially when things come up in my social life. It's hard to say no sometimes. Yeah, so that's a great comment, and let's touch on this the next slide about saying no and talking about motivation, which was one of the things that people found tricky. So first thing I'd like everyone to do is just on your piece of paper, write down what routine you would like to introduce in your life and how that ties into a goal that you're trying to accomplish. And I'm just going to stop talking for 30 seconds. And most people who know me well will say it's a miracle I stopped talking for 30 seconds. Okay, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to write something down around what they're trying to accomplish. The example I'm going to use is I have been working on a meditation routine to help improve my mental health. So that will be the example that I'm going to be running through the rest of the presentation. But feel free to ask any questions that you want that relate to any specific thing that you're trying to do. Especially the health activity, kind of weight loss type of stuff. I have other views on that. Start exercising, have a hard time establishing routines. Okay, so then let's go on to the next slide, because this is kind of the one that I want to focus a bit more time on. So, let's tie it back into then starting a routine around exercise or more activity. So now I want you to write down all the reasons you actually want to start your routine, or what's driving you towards your goal. And try to go as deep as you can, because what I found in the past is that we've all started things like want to exercise more. Why? Because I want better abs. So that is true. And I do want better abs. But, oh, and I lost the bet. Guilfoyle came at 12:22. So, but when I've thought more about why I want to focus on my mental health, I actually had to think really for a long time about, post my wife passing away, what was really important to me in life. A lot of it was around being there for my kids. And how do I be the best dad that I can be, given that I have two sons, and now I have two sons and a stepdaughter and a stepson and a dog. And what do I need to do to be there for them? And a lot of it came down to my mental health, and how, if my mental health isn't in a good place, then I'm unable to do a lot of the other things that I want to do, including exercising and a number of other things that support me in being there for everyone in my life on a day-to-day basis. So the same thing with exercise. A lot of times people will think about why they want to make a healthy change, but they don't think through super deep about why it's important to them. And I used to joke that my brother-in-law, who used to work with a bunch of different personal trainers, he couldn't get motivated, but his real passion in life was driving. And if any personal trainer had said, we can make you a second a lap faster on the race course, he would have done whatever they said. But they didn't really listen to what his goals were and what motivated him. And so they never kind of linked back what they were asking him to do to what would have been the most relevant thing in his life. Yeah, so some comments here. So better fitness so I can finish a hike with the family, feel better about myself. Being there for family ranks up there. Being there for family longer ranks up there too. There is, being very honest, there is a mortality thing. The reason I don't ride a motorcycle anymore is because I've been cautioned not to die in a fiery motorcycle accident while my kids don't have a mom. So sometimes there's some practical hard decisions that you have to make. So then when you're thinking about your routine, I know probably 80% of the people on this call, there's only one person, there's a few people who are young, but a lot of us are in our 40s and 50s. So you've been around long enough to know what you do well. So now on your piece of paper, write down the things that you do well related to your routine. So in my case, I'm an accountant by training. I tend to be quite logical. I tend to be pretty good at planning things and breaking things down. And I tend to be quite good at seeing the big picture and how things tie together. We all have things that we do well, and we should all do our best to play to those strengths, especially when we're trying to develop new routines, so that we maximize the probability of being successful. So just take a few seconds and write down the strengths that you have. And then predictably, the next thing is write down the things that could be tricky when it comes to starting a routine. And going back to the original or the second poll question, so motivation and finding the time were the two big ones. On the motivation front, I do think, in my experience, that the going back to what's truly the motivator, where it's coming from, helps me at least be as motivated as can be. But then also, I think recognizing when you're struggling with motivation, what things you can do to sort of put in a proxy for motivation. So since a lot of people were interested in things health related, the easiest things to do are things like, if you're going to try to do something from an exercise perspective, involve a third party. So I've done things in the past. When I lived in Hong Kong, I wanted to run a marathon, so I got a friend of mine to commit to doing the marathon, and we started training together. And we used to call it the call of shame. If you missed training, you had to phone the other person and apologize. And no one ever wanted to make the call of shame. And so we found that to be super effective. And to this day, we still joke about the call of shame. That's why, if it works in your life, and it's harder now with COVID, signing up for a class, and even COVID has been worked around. So I actually participate in a structured cycling training program where I show up on Tuesday and Thursday morning at 6 a.m. And again, I know the instructor, and it's the email of shame if I don't show up. So if for whatever reason you can't tie it back into something that is really deeply meaningful to you, think about ways that you can bring external motivators into the situation by committing in front of other people, by creating your own support group, by making a commitment to work out together, by signing up for a class. Things like that can all have a positive impact on your motivation. On the time side, time is tricky. I think, to me, what I found is that it has less to do with time and more to do with energy. So I did the math because I'm a nerd. So we all have 168 hours in the week. If we all get 8 hours of sleep, that's 56 hours of sleep. And if we all work, let's say we're working 50 hours a week, if you include commutes and stuff like that. So that leaves you with 62 hours to do all the other stuff in life. So if you're looking at exercising, say 4 times a week, you have 62 hours to find those 4 hours. And when you put it that way, it doesn't sound like much, but there's a reality of life where there's times when we're all just super tired, and the best we can do is sit on the couch and watch Netflix. And so the question becomes, to me, more, how can we create more time where we have the capacity, when we're not worn down, to actually be effective. And so in some cases, it's finding out what time of day is a better time. So some people are really good at night. Some people are really good in the morning. I work out at 6 in the morning, because if I don't, I probably won't at 7 o'clock at night. So it's really taking a step back and saying, what is the most important thing to you? And then saying, okay, if this is really the most important thing to me, when am I going to do it so it's actually going to get done? And that's the reason why I meditate first thing in the morning, is because I know if I don't do it first thing in the morning, I will not do it. So I'm just looking at, there's no questions, no other stuff. So then, what are some best practices when setting up new routines? And we'll tie this back in then. First and foremost, it's starting small, and it's really even smaller than you think. So I would suggest, and I'm just going through this right now. So I started back into my cycling routine, and I'm working together with a friend who's a coach, and she has given me less to do than I think I need to do. And I started to realize after a couple of months that actually is super smart, because I always feel like I should be doing more. And so I'm always ready to go. And some of these workouts are horrible, but I still feel motivated to do them. So I would suggest that if you've struggled in the past around setting up routines, think of doing something, but scale it back to the point where you think it's probably not enough. For my meditation practice, I started at 20-minute meditations. I failed. I went back to 15. I failed, and then I came back to 10. And 10 has turned out to be a game changer because it actually doesn't seem like enough meditation, but I actually do it. And so my strategy is to continue to do it for some period of time. I'm not sure when. And then maybe I always stay at 10 minutes a day, or maybe I expand to 15 or 20. But I think it's more important to do the 10 than to not do the 20. Positive motivation. So again, focusing on the why. So trying to make it as personal to you, trying to build emotion into it as to, being there for your kids or whatever is the most important thing to you. But really trying to tie everything back to the why. I think self-compassion is super important when it comes to routines. So there's a tendency for people to really beat themselves up when it comes to missing a day, especially when it comes to exercise. The research shows that if you miss a day, it's not actually going to impact you over the long term as far as adherence. Yet we sort of sabotage ourselves and make it more likely we'll miss the next day because we beat ourselves up so much, and there's so much guilt associated with missing today. So again, going back to the training analogy and what is the best workout to do, it's the workout that you do. And so if you try to start a routine and you do it only once, you're still one time better than you were having done nothing. So every time you do something, that's awesome. Every time you don't do something, you aren't any worse off than you were before. So if you miss a day because life happens or for whatever reason, that's okay. And the next day, try to get back into the routine. And if you miss that day, then, life happens and try to get back into the routine. But as the last point suggests, if you miss too many days in a row, it's never a bad thing to step back and say, okay, well, why am I missing all of these days? Well, Mike, you shouldn't have been trying to meditate for 20 minutes every day. 10 minutes probably makes more sense. And then the other item I think is really important is the rate support system. And it will depend on the individual, but a lot of stuff I will talk to Tanya, and I have another friend who knows me really well, not just to support me, but also to sanity check what I plan to do. And a classic example for me was when I used to do triathlons when I lived in Hong Kong. And I went in, I was very triumphant, and I went to talk to my wife when she was about 7 months pregnant. And I said, this triathlon season, I'm going to cut back from 6 triathlons to 5 triathlons because I know I'm going to be busy being a dad. And she just looked at me like I was an idiot and didn't say anything. And then she watched me as I stopped training, I think about 3 days after our son was born. And it took me quite a while to get back into training and doing triathlons. But sometimes you need those people in your life to say, that's not practical for you. Maybe think about another approach. But you also need those cheerleaders in your life who are going to be there and say, let's go for a walk, or, let's, if it's something that's related to diet, let's eat well together. And I'm just going back to make sure I covered everything. So that brings us to 36 minutes. So time goal met. And hoping to open this up to questions where I'm happy to give my perspective. And then if someone asks a question and you think of something that would be beneficial for people to think about, feel free to throw responses into the chat that would add value to the rest of the participants. So if you have a question, please click on the Q&A button and fire away. Oh, and then Julian, just remind me for Q&A, please choose the anonymous option when submitting your questions. Do you set alarms to remind me, or how do you remind yourself when life takes over? This will be super lame sounding, but the answer is yes. I set alarms to remind me. And because of the work that I've done, I put everything into Microsoft Office. So literally, if you look at my calendar, I have an office meeting at 6 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays to do my bike ride. I have, if I'm committing to something with Tanya on Friday, I have a meeting set up with a reminder saying that I'm having dinner with her. And there's a lot of research around how if you take as many things as possible like that out of your brain and you write it down and you use a system for reminding yourself, then it frees your brain up a lot more to have less stress and to be higher functioning for the other things that might be more important in your life. If you're not a nerd like me with Microsoft Office, I think there's other calendar solutions. There's, setting reminders in your phone. I think anything that you really want to do, I would suggest getting it out of your brain and putting it into some form of technology, or engage someone else to remind you in doing it. Yeah, and then when life takes over, I'll be honest, I sometimes miss things, and it's tough. So I think you just know yourself, and sometimes you set multiple reminders, or you make sure that someone double checks with you if something's really important and reminds you. And don't be all snippy with them when they remind you. Thank them, because they're just trying to help out. Do you have a criteria of the type of people you ask for help? I keep asking for help to the wrong people. That's a fantastic question. I think in life, if we're talking about family and friends, I think down deep, we all sort of know who are the people who are in our corner and who are going to be there for us, and those people who will be like, oh, you're trying to lose weight, you look fine, let's go to the bar. And so you have to pick and choose. I think it's really about sort of knowing the people in your life and looking for those people who are aligned with what's in your best interest. And you'll find along the way that some people aren't, and those aren't the people you ask. And sometimes, we have to be blunt and say, well, why are they our friends, or why are they in our lives? That's a great question. And then when it comes to more professional help, I think a lot of it it depends on friends who you think might be really good at recommending someone, or the different situations you're in. The big thing I would say is be demanding in what you're looking for in a person, and don't be afraid to try different people. So I've worked with a couple of different professional psychologists. They're not offended if it's not a fit. So if a person is not a fit and you don't think therapy is going to work with them, don't stay with them, because, and it's often a Canadian thing where we don't want to upset anyone. Go find someone else. Because it's about you. It's not about them. And the most important thing is for you to get what you need, not worrying about their feelings. I've dabbled in meditation too, but it hasn't stuck. I'm curious about if you are feeling the benefits of your new meditation practice to your mental health. Yes, so full disclosure, this has been going on for 9 years, and it is, for me, very hard. I started even before my wife got sick. I was having some issues. I was working with a psychologist more around anxiety and work. And she put me on to an app called Headspace. And I liked it, but I had a hard time sticking with it. And I've I've been back and forth. I've always stuck with Headspace. I really like Andy, the guy who started Headspace, and I really like the structure of what they do. But yeah, it's hard. But the question, do you feel the benefits? Absolutely yes. And it's embarrassing to say that I absolutely know that I go through the day so much better having meditated than if I don't. Yet sometimes I don't. And logically, I'm kind of like, but why wouldn't I take the 10 minutes? And I think going from 20 down to 10, um, uh, for whatever reason, somehow that made it so much easier for me to continue on consistently. So yeah, meditation is awesome. I would say again, find the right thing for you. I've talked to a number of friends. I know some people like Headspace. Tanya as Deepak Chopra. There's a bunch of different options that you have now. It's not important what I use, it's important what works for you. So find something that works for you if this is something you're interested in. Start small and go from there. Um, do you have any tips on finding routines that will best fit you in regards to mental health? You know, again, I'm not a mental health professional. I think to me it was really going back to what was creating challenges in my life, and also um, how to free up space to deal with those challenges. And so um, a lot of for me, what was taking up space in my mind was I have a hard time saying no. And so I've said yes to so many things over the years that things had stacked up. And I've got 5 companies, I think, in the background, in addition to my 2 day jobs that I'm taking care of. And I used to be able to throw a ton of energy at everything and make it all work. And I found as I've gotten older, so I'm 54 now, that that doesn't work anymore. And so I've had to get smarter, and I've had to look for those opportunities to reduce that background stretch. So move my tachometer needle back that way. The meditation helps me deal with the the bumps in the road, but then also helps me reduce my day-to-day stress as well. So it gives me a lot more room on my tachometer to take on new stuff or to stay in a good space on an ongoing basis. So I think a lot of it is reflection, figuring out what are the things that are providing you with stress, and then figuring out if you need different types of support, but then how to systematically try to deal with them. Um, I can relate to the individual in the chat where someone said it's hard to say no to others. Understand the importance of being there for ourselves so we can be more present and available. Do you have any tips on how to communicate your own need to be there for yourself? Yeah, so I think, uh-oh. Hopefully my dog has now started touching the keyboard. So here we go. We're going backwards now. Thanks, GoFlow. So yeah, the no thing has always been a super challenge for me. And I hope what you're getting out of this is that this isn't easy, and hopefully some of these ideas will help you, but you're not alone, and this is kind of a lifetime journey. And so, I think again, it's going back to why and what's important to you, and recognizing that if people have an issue with what's important to you, then maybe there's a change that needs to be made in your life related to that person. So I think to me, it's about making sure you're clear on your why. But then I think it's also being respectful of the other side of the conversation. So sometimes you have to keep your ears open to maybe there's a why that's important to the other person, right? So it's great to have people in your life, especially family and friends who support you. You also want to keep your spidey sense open to maybe there's something going on in their life that makes things challenging. But I think sometimes you just have to be a little bit brutal at saying no um, when it comes down to it. And so there's a lot of times now where people will ask me to do something or um, to go out or whatever the case might be. And if I don't have time, I'll just say no. And whereas in the past I would have gone, okay, yeah. And then I would have been at work until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, knowing that that was a really bad idea. So I think it's just building that discipline over time and knowing, I think we all know what we should do. It's just doing what we know we should do that's the hard part. What's the best way to keep the eye on the prize when you do fall short on the daily tasks and start down the slope of letting it all stop? So I'm super bad at times at getting totally overwhelmed by, I'll have like 15 emails come at me, and yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, if we go back to some people were talking about work things, and I'm assuming this is more of a work thing, then I would say structure your day around what you absolutely positively have to get done during that day, and don't put in a bunch of, like, if you have a to-do list with 20 things but only 2 of them need to get done, I would just do a to-do list of 2 things, and then somewhere in the background have, like, I actually have a master list of all the stuff I need to do, which is like 150 items. But today, my big thing was getting ready for the webinar, and I have a couple other things. If I get all of that done, then I'm going to move on to other things I need to do off the big list. But if I don't get those 3 things done, or sorry, if something else comes at me, I'm not sort of feeling overwhelmed because I think I have to do 20 things when I know really I only have to do 3. And then I would build resetting into, at least on a weekly basis, stepping back and looking at everything and saying, okay, well, sometimes, the week didn't go the way I planned. What am I going to do next week? And if you can, and sometimes you can't actually, but if you can, do it at the end of the day and say, okay, well, I thought I was going to do this. The day got away from me. What happened? And, what am I going to do tomorrow that's going to hopefully make things a bit different? I struggle on the support system side. All of my friends seem to be in the red zone. I could be in the mid-50s age group. Health issues, parental deaths. I just ordered a Panda planner, and I'm hoping it will help provide structure support. Have you ever used that or other planner you like for accountability? I'm sorry, I haven't used Panda Planner. Again, I'm an Outlook guy. I actually purposely did it in Outlook because I use it day in and day out for work. I hear what you're saying on the mid-50s age group, and and that's where I think getting some sort of professional support would likely make some sense, right? Because the other thing is, we talk to our family and friends, but sometimes our family and friends don't give us the best advice. And the beauty of working with a professional psychologist or other types of professional resources is they're trained, and they've even though we think our problems are unique, and I thought, given my situation, it's very unique, but you learn, having gone through the trauma that I've gone through, that a lot of people have been through similar stuff. And someone who's seen it multiple times and is the right person for you from a professional perspective can be a big game changer. So don't be shy about engaging a professional resource if you have a hard time finding one in your life. Sorry that I can't. I've got a few other things that we have time I can talk to you about from a planning perspective, but not a general planner like that. My motivation is very high initially, but then just dips down, and then it's all over, and I give on the routine. How do I get over this pattern? I would say you really have to set, if you've got high motivation, and I'm somewhat similar, you have to keep setting new goals or think around things like events or other rewards, but really set up milestones. So if your motivation is really high, like for my cycling training, it's all chunked up into 12-week chunks. I'm a nerd. I set up wattage targets and I work towards them, and then I retest myself and I do it again. Um, Same thing for, when I'm trying to lose weight. I do say I want to lose 20 pounds, but then I'm actually thinking about on kind of a weekly and monthly basis. And I think, again, going back to um, sort of being positive and sort of self-compassion, um, build rewards into it, build something relevant in, so that if you are successful initially, celebrate that and then look towards the next goal and the next reward would be my best advice for that. Do you have a regular plan time that you take time to evaluate what is working and what is not? So that's an interesting one. It's taken me 54 years to figure this out, but I'm actually taking a week off every month to do that. And so I had to go back to my colleagues at work at the end of or beginning of January, and not everyone can do this. And people will be like, "Hey, that's not going to work for me." But what I found was that things had gotten to the point where if I want to continue on, so I haven't talked about it, but I want to continue working. My goal is indefinitely in a way that I want to work, and so to basically maintain my longevity, I take the last week of every month off to read a bunch of stuff I haven't had time to read, and to kind of look back at the last 3 or 4 weeks, what's worked, what hasn't worked, reassess things, and then plan the next 3 or 4 weeks. That might not work for everyone. Maybe it is a half day every month. I think to get in the routine, the minimum routine I would recommend is an hour at the end of the week, and maybe a few hours plus at the end of every month to go back through everything, see what's worked, see what hasn't worked, and constantly be reassessing. And don't be afraid about. I went back to the CEOs of both the companies I work at, and I asked for their feedback and said, like, what do you think I'm doing well, and what aren't I doing well? And they gave me some really good advice. I'm a big nerd, so personally, I've had a lot of success with automating scheduling parts of my routine. Sometimes the hardest part is just getting started. Just thought I'd share. Yeah. So basically saying they can set up a lot of things where, so this is a good share. There's a lot of stuff that we've got built into our life. Thanks so much for sending this in. I just totally took all the notifications off my phone. We have these opportunities to build a lot of reminders and things into our life, but we also have a lot of stuff coming at us that we can get rid of. And so this was actually part of my meditation routine. And one of the things that was talked about was how you interact with your technology. And one of the things that was suggested, which I've done recently and has been awesome, is completely disable the notifications in your phone. Because my phone charges on my desk, and I would get probably 30 notifications a day of text messages and different newspapers and things like that. And that's distracting you every time that happens. And so ask yourself, do you need those distractions or not? If you absolutely need to be notified of certain things during the day, leave those notifications on. But if it's just kind of a interesting thing that someone just sent you something on Facebook, turn that notification off. My tip on the no thing is to try to switch your thinking to the fact that you are saying yes to something else when you are saying no to something that doesn't fit. I'm stealing that one. That's a fantastic way of putting it. So again, if you're forced to say, I guess I shouldn't say forced. If you choose to say no to something, this is a great suggestion. It's because you're saying saying yes to something else. And if you've done some work on your why and what's the most important thing to you, you're saying yes to something else that is probably more important to you in life. than is the thing you're saying no to. That was awesome. It's 12:57. I'm so grateful for all the questions and for all the people who spent time here today. Thank you all so much. Unless anyone has any final comments or questions, and there's one final comment here. I find the hardest part of forming a routine is starting. I realize now it's probably because I'm quitting too early. Yeah, like just do your best to keep at it and get lots of support, but start small is kind of the biggest thing for me. That was great. Thanks for your tips and support. Yeah, thank you all once again. Very grateful for everyone spending an hour here today. I hope that was useful. Julian, thanks for your support. We can stop recording. Everyone have a fantastic rest of the day. Thanks very much.